The thin mountain air clawed at my lungs, sharp and relentless with each inhale. I tugged my flannel sleeves lower, the rough weave scraping my wrists, as the lodge's silence wrapped tight around us. I hadn't come to this remote summit seeking connection, just another retreat, another mask over my guarded heart. But Victoria, the CEO, moved through the group with that unyielding poise, her eyes distant yet pulling at something hidden in me. The cabin door latched behind us that first evening, sealing the quiet tensions. In the low light, our glances tangled, unspoken sparks flickering immediate. We'd driven up those twisting roads, pines crowding close, their resin scent thickening the air mile by mile. The lodge emerged at the peak, sturdy logs weathered gray, chimneys puffing faint smoke into the crisp sky. I unloaded my bag from the van, boots sinking into the soft earth, and spotted Victoria ahead. Her coat slung over one shoulder, steps sure as she claimed the main hall. As her assistant, I trailed, flipping through the agenda, pages whispering in the wind. Black coffee burned my tongue at breakfast, steam curling thick, while I noted her rigid posture across the scarred table. Her instructions came crisp, slicing the morning chatter. But in the pauses between sessions, a subtle warmth stirred, uninvited. My walls stood high, built from queer heartbreaks that lingered like faint scars on bark. Women who'd slipped away under family stares, leaving me to choose isolation in the corporate straightness. Nights alone had hardened me, empathy buried deep against judgments that cut clean. I caught her on the porch one afternoon, pacing slow, sunlight slanting through the branches, shadows stretching long. Did she carry the same hidden bends, her executive shell cracking under unseen loads? Back in the city office, her emails stayed formal, clipped. But here, the mountain's vastness amplified the undercurrents. I'd overhear her calls, tones fraying at edges, words snapping like dry twigs. The retreat's seclusion honed every look, barriers feeling thinner in the open air. Routines took hold gradual. Mornings began with the bell's low toll, drawing us to the great hall where the fire snapped in the stone hearth, chasing the chill from the rafters. I'd arrange her notes, fingers numb on the crisp paper, as she scanned projections, her jaw set tight. Afternoons meant group hikes, paths narrowing through damp ferns, mist clinging heavy to our clothes. We'd lag behind sometimes, her queries on timings veering close. Did the quiet up here unsettle me? I'd murmur no, voice even, but the draw to her veiled intensity grew, pulling at my edges. Evenings gathered us at communal tables, forks clinking on plates, voices bouncing off the beams. Yet her gaze would find mine across the space, lingering a breath before drifting. Office rhythms lingered, understated but pressing. Her critiques in huddles stayed pointed, my answers balanced. But in the still moments, projector warming with a low hum, or refills from the hissing urn, a heat built quiet. Old wounds resurfaced unasked, a lover who'd withdrawn when pressures mounted, forcing me to mend solo, echoing the lone trails I'd walked. Here, understanding bridged us wordless. A late strategy session trapped us in a side room, door sealing with a soft click, chairs inching nearer amid the urgency. Schedules sprawled across the table, her fingertip following lines, while mine pinned the corners. Pine wove through the air, blending with candle wax flickering on the ledge, and the divides eased. Her knuckles grazed my hand, chance or intent, and the space hummed, alive with the unnamed. Night deepened beyond the panes, stars piercing the dark, sharpening the hush between duties. I sensed then, lines drawing tight, poised to give. Nighttime quiet deepened the pull, private spaces in the cabins offering stolen breaths. I'd hear the floorboards creak under her steps in the shared lounge after lights dimmed, the lantern's glow casting her shadow long. We'd linger over tea steaming in mugs, the herbal scent rising sharp. Her questions turning inward. How did I manage the solitude? My replies stayed guarded, but her eyes held mine, empathy flickering like embers. Shared routines bound us closer. Mornings passing cream in the dim kitchen, fingers brushing deliberate now, warmth lingering on skin. The lodge's rituals, fire tending at dusk, logs thudding into place, mirrored our hidden rhythms, flames crackling as confessions hovered unspoken. Past heartbreaks echoed in the quiet, her voice once catching on a family demand that straightened every curve, mine on rejections that taught silence. Chosen bonds formed tentative, her hand steadying mine during a shadowed walk, the path's soft needles muffling our steps. The mountain's isolation stripped pretenses, fostering a chosen family in glances, touches veiled but real. Attraction simmered fast, her proximity in those private alcoves sending heat curling low, defenses yielding to the spark we'd yet to name. The conference room felt denser that morning, heavy curtains muting the daylight to a soft haze, wooden panels absorbing the low murmur of arriving execs. The projector whirred to life, its beam slicing across the screen, charts blooming in stark whites and blues. Chairs scraped as everyone settled, notebooks flipping open, the air laced with the faint, acrid bite of fresh ink from markers on the sideboard. Victoria positioned herself at the podium, remote clutched tight, her silhouette sharp against the glow. I claimed a seat toward the back, my notebook balanced on my knee, pen poised, but my focus locked on her. The subtle tension in her stance, shoulders squared yet unyielding, like a branch bent too far under snow. She launched into the pitch with her usual command, voice threading clear through the room, dissecting market trends and quarterly forecasts. Heads nodded, pens scratched in rhythm, the group leaning forward as she clicked to the next slide. But I caught the shift early, a faint tremor in her phrasing, words clipping shorter than before. Her free hand gripped the podium's edge, fingers whitening against the polished oak, as if rooting herself against a gathering wind. The room's quiet amplified it all. No city clamor to buffer, just the retreat's isolation pressing in, the distant creak of settling logs echoing like a held breath. Sweat gathered at her temples, glistening under the lamp's warm pool, despite the chill drafting from the stone floor. My own pulse quickened, recognition stirring deep, the guarded spiral I'd hidden in past crises, queer weights that twisted inward until breaths fractured. Her inhales grew shallow now, chest rising in quick, uneven pulls, the poised facade fraying at the seams. Questions from the execs mounted, voices probing risks and timelines, oblivious to the storm building behind her eyes. She repeated a bullet point, gaze flicking to the window where pines loomed dark and still, the mountain's vastness mirroring her inner press. Empathy pulled at me sharp, my walls echoing hers. I'd armored against similar breaks, heartbreaks from lovers who'd vanished under judgmental gazes, leaving me to steady alone. But here, seeing her unravel stirred the urge to bridge it, fast and unbidden. I rose quietly, weaving to the side table, the cool glass of water slick in my hand, condensation beating like morning dew. No announcements, just a steady path to her side, placing it near her notes with a subtle nod. Our eyes met then, hers wide, with the edge of panic, mine offering anchor without demand. "One breath at a time," I whispered, low enough for only her, my voice cutting the hum like a steady thread. The group shifted, but carried on, the moment fragile, yet held. She paused, hand lifting to the glass, fingers brushing mine. Deliberate now, cool skin warming on contact, a spark jolting quick through us both. The air thickened, pine from her sweater mingling with the room's wax polish, our shared secrecy igniting something immediate, defenses thinning in that charged hush. The pitch faltered harder as slides advanced, her words stumbling, face paling against the screen's glare. Murmurs rose soft from the chairs, execs exchanging glances, the pressure coiling tighter in the sealed space. Her remote slipped slightly, clattering faint, breaths turning to gasps that rasped against the quiet. The isolation hit full then. No escape in the remote heights, just the weight of expectations crashing like unseen falls. I moved without thought, excusing myself with a murmured logistics check, my hand light on her elbow as I guided her toward the side door. She leaned in, trusting the contact, our arms linking firm in the dim hallway beyond. The door sealed with a soft thud, murmurs fading, leaving only our uneven rhythms echoing off the paneled walls. We reached the alcove quick, her steps faltering, body folding onto the bench with an exhale that shook. The wood bit cold through my jeans as I knelt close, her hands twisting in her lap, knuckles stark. "Look at me," I said, palm cupping her wrist, feeling the wild flutter beneath, her skin clammy, yet yielding to my warmth. The narrow space closed around us, lantern light flickering shadows across her face, deepening the raw lines. Past guardedness mirrored back, my own spirals from rejections that bent but never broke me, now fueling this rescue. Her eyes locked on mine, vulnerability pouring out, the spark from our brush flaring hotter, immediate and mutual, as the mountain's quiet held our unraveling. She slumped deeper into the bench, her body curling forward as breaths tore out in jagged bursts, like wind ripping through stripped branches. The alcove's walls seemed to lean in, wooden panels cool and unyielding against my shoulder as I knelt closer, the faint scent of aged timber mixing with the sharp tang of her fierce sweat. Her hands clenched in her lap, nails digging into palms, knuckles blooming white against the dark fabric of her slacks. Shadows from the single lantern danced across her face, hollowing her cheeks, her eyes darting unfocused. The CEO's command shattered into this raw, trembling core. I wrapped my fingers around her wrist, steadying the rapid thrum beneath her skin. Cool at first from the mountain draft seeping through cracks, then warming as my grip held firm. "Focus here," I murmured, voice threading low through the hush, my thumb pressing slow circles over her pulse, willing it to match mine. Deliberate, even. Her gaze snapped to mine, wide and fractured, the vulnerability hitting me like a gust. I guided her other hand to her chest, mine layering over it, feeling the erratic rise and fall. In slow, through your nose. Hold it. Out through your mouth. The words anchored us, my breath syncing with the instruction, the air between us thick with pine carried from her clothes and the faint, waxy smoke from the lantern's wick. Her inhales caught at first, hitching sharp, body shuddering as if the weight of the boardroom still crushed down, amplified by the retreat's isolation. No distractions, just this enclosed quiet, stripping everything bare. I named the sensations aloud, pulling her back to the present. Feel the wood under you, solid and cool, the chill on your skin from the draft. Her chest heaved, but the rhythm began to steady, gasps easing into measured pulls, the tremor in her arm fading pulse by pulse under my touch. Empathy surged unbidden, my own guarded spirals flashing. Those queer nights when judgments from past lovers had twisted my breaths tight, leaving me to rebuild in silence. Here, seeing her break mirrored my hidden fractures, stirring a fierce need to hold her steady, defenses yielding fast. She gripped my hand harder then, nails pressing into my skin, the pain grounding us both as her body leaned into mine, shoulder to shoulder on the narrow bench. Fragments spilled out between slowing exhales, voice fraying raw. "It's swallowing me," she whispered, head dropping forward until her temple brushed my collar, the warmth of her breath ghosting my neck. The eyes, the choices, they demand perfection, no cracks. And underneath, the truths I bury, it chokes everything. Her words carried the load she'd hauled alone, family legacies straightening her paths when her heart curved toward women, shadows of relationships stifled by corporate glare. I nodded against her hair, the strands soft and cool, my free arm sliding around her waist, pulling her closer in the dim. "I've choked on the same," I said, voice low, sharing the echo without demand. Rejections that armored me thick, choosing solitude over the pain of hidden bends in a world that clipped them short. The peak crested hard, her frame shaking violent for a beat, a soft gasp escaping as tears welled, spilling hot down her cheek to dampen my sleeve. I wiped them away with my thumb, skin salty on my tongue when I brushed it absently, the intimacy immediate, unguarded. Her body slumped back then, exhales evening, color flushing faint into her face as the spiral released its hold. The lantern's glow softened her features, eyes lifting to mine with a depth that pierced, the rawness lingering but steady now. Our hands stayed clasped, fingers interlacing tight, her thumb tracing my knuckles deliberate, sending a jolt up my arm. Warm, electric. The spark from our earlier brush flaring quick and hot. Proximity charged the air thicker, her knee pressing mine under the blanket I'd tugged from the bench's edge, wool rough and shared between us. Pine clung to her, mingling with the subtle musk of her skin, breaths mingling close in the narrowing space. Attraction ignited fast, her gaze dropping to my lips, the pull mutual and undeniable, defenses dissolving in the post-crisis hush. "You pulled me back," she murmured, voice husky, her free hand rising to cup my jaw. Touch light but intent, heat curling low in my gut. I leaned in, the world fading to that contact, our mouths meeting urgent. Soft at first, then deepening as lips parted, tongues brushing tentative, her fingers threading into my hair, tugging gentle. The kiss held the storm's echo, raw and immediate, her body shifting closer, erasing the divides we'd both guarded so long. We broke apart slow, foreheads touching, breaths ragged and synced, the alcove feeling alive with us. Her eyes searched mine, affirming the want. No force, just clear desire mirrored back. I need it," she whispered, palm sliding to my neck, the consent hanging tender, pulling me under. I nodded, hand covering hers, the vow silent but there. We'd chase this spark, careful yet fierce, the mountains quiet witnessing our hidden ignition. We lingered there, the alcove's hush wrapping us tighter, her forehead still pressed to mine, breaths slowing to match the lantern's steady flicker. Her hand stayed at my neck, fingers warm now, tracing the line of my jaw with a touch that sent fresh sparks skittering down my spine. The wool blanket tangled around our legs, rough edges scratching my calves, while the faint draft carried pine from the hallway, grounding the heat building between us. I pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, the vulnerability in them mirroring my own, raw edges exposed, no masks left in this narrow space. "You saw through it all," she whispered, voice husky against the quiet, her thumb brushing my lower lip, lingering, deliberate. The confession pulled more from her then, words tumbling soft in the dim. The isolation of leading from the top, family demands that forced her path straight when her desires curved toward women, past loves stifled in shadows to protect the empire she'd built. "I've carried it alone so long," she said, her grip tightening on my shirt, pulling me closer, the fabric bunching under her palm. It echoed my guarded life, the heartbreaks from lovers who'd faded under judgmental whispers, choosing solitude to shield my queer truths in the office's straight lines. Empathy flooded quick, our shared fractures bridging without effort, her warmth drawing mine like embers catching. I nodded, my hand sliding to her waist, feeling the steady rise of her chest through the thin blouse, the heat of her body cutting the chill. "No more alone," I murmured, the words sealing something immediate, our knees pressing firmer under the blanket. Attraction flared hotter now, the post-crisis rush igniting fast, her gaze dropping to my mouth again, the air thickening with want unspoken but clear. She leaned in first this time, lips meeting mine urgent, no hesitation, tongues tangling deeper as her fingers wove into my hair, tugging just enough to arch my neck. The kiss tasted of salt from her tears and the faint bitterness of the water she'd sipped, her body shifting to straddle my lap on the bench, weight settling warm and insistent. Hands explored careful but bold, mine tracing the curve of her back, slipping under her shirt to feel the smooth skin there, cool at first, then heating under my palms. She gasped into my mouth, a soft sound that vibrated through me, her hips rocking subtle against mine, friction sending jolts low and sharp. Consent wove through every pause, her eyes searching mine when we broke for air. "This okay?" breathed against my cheek, my nod pulling her back in, fierce and mutual. The alcove shrank to just us, wooden walls muffling the distant lodge sounds, her scent, pine and subtle musk, filling my lungs as breaths ragged between us. We eased apart eventually, her forehead to mine again, smiles faint but real in the lantern's glow. "We can't stop now," she said, voice low, fingers interlacing with mine. The spark solidified into flame, hidden but burning bright. The retreat's bell tolled faint outside, signaling evening's close, but we ignored it, stealing more moments, soft kisses trailing my neck, her teeth grazing light, drawing a shiver that she chased with her tongue. My hands cupped her hips, holding her steady, the wool blanket slipping to the floor with a soft thud, exposing us to the draft, but not the heat. Night deepened as we finally parted, her cabin across the grounds, mine separate in the cold. Steps echoed on the path, pine needles soft underfoot, the stars sharp overhead. My skin tingled from her touch, pulse still racing as I slipped inside, the door latching quiet. Messages lit my phone soon after, her words simple, charged. "Can't sleep thinking of you." I replied fast, fingers flying, the screen's glow warming the dark room. Veiled plans formed in texts, stolen glances promised for dawn. The spark had caught quick, defenses crumbling in that alcove, pulling us into a secret rhythm amid the retreat's watchful quiet. Guarded edges softened further in the hours before sleep, my mind replaying her confessions, the weight of hidden desires matching my own past pains, rejections that had taught me to bury deep. But with her it felt possible, chosen and real, the mountain's isolation fostering this bold ignition. Attraction hummed constant now, bodies remembering the press, the taste, promising more in the shadows. Dawn crept in slow, pale light seeping through the cabin's frost-rimmed window, turning the wooden slats a soft gray. I stirred under the quilt's heavy weight, the fabric rough against my skin, air thick with the night's chill clinging to everything. Footsteps whispered outside my door, hers, tentative in the early hush. The knob turned soft and she slipped inside, robe cinched loose around her waist, hair falling tousled over one shoulder. Our eyes locked across the dim space, the pull from last night humming immediate, pulling her closer without a word. She crossed to the bed, the floorboards creaking faint under her bare feet, and sat on the edge, her hand finding mine beneath the covers. Warm, fingers interlacing firm. "Couldn't wait," she murmured, voice low against the quiet, leaning in until her breath ghosted my lips. The kiss came fast, urgent from the start, lips parting as tongues met, her body shifting to press against mine, heat flaring through the thin layers between us. My hands slid up her arms, feeling the goosebumps rise under my palms, the robe slipping open to reveal skin cool from the morning air. She gasped into my mouth, a sound that vibrated deep, her weight settling over me, hips aligning with a deliberate rock that sent sparks low and sharp. We broke for air, foreheads touching, her eyes dark and intent in the half-light. "This is us now," she whispered, thumb tracing my collarbone, the touch electric. Consent clear in the way she paused, waiting for my nod before diving back in. Kisses trailing my neck, teeth grazing light, drawing shivers that she soothed with her tongue. Hands explored bolder, mine cupping her hips, pulling her closer, fabric whispering as it fell away. The cabin shrank to our breaths, ragged and synced, pine scent from her hair mingling with the faint musk of arousal, bodies moving together urgent, friction building to a peak that crested soft but fierce, her name spilling from my lips in the hush. Daylight forced the veil down, rolls snapping back as the group gathered for sessions. The great hall filled with execs, chairs scraping over the worn floor, voices droning through agendas under the high beams. I sat opposite her, notebook open, pen scratching notes while her gaze flicked to mine during lulls. Quick, loaded, vanishing before eyes turned. Professional distance held on the surface, her directives sharp as ever, my responses measured. But under the long table, her foot nudged mine deliberate, the contact warm through socks, a secret pulse that quickened my heart. A slipped memo landed in my lap mid-meeting, her script tight. "Behind the barn, noon." My fingers trembled folding it away, meeting her eyes once, the nod sealing our hidden thread. We met on the shadowed path, trails branching off unseen from the main group, ferns brushing our legs as mist hung heavy in the air. No one trailed. The retreat's sprawl hit us easy, Hands linked open now, her palm calloused faint from years of control, grounding me against the damp chill. We walked pressed close, shoulders bumping, the world narrowing to rustling leaves and our synced steps, breaths visible in the cool. Bonds deepened swift, words pouring as the path steepened. She spoke first, voice hushed against the wind. Legacies that demanded flawless leads. A life forced linear when her truths arc toward women. Love's lost to shadowed ends under boardroom weights. It hollowed me, she said, squeezing my hand. Pain fresh like split wood. I sheared back, my fears of isolation cracking open. The guarded choices after lovers faded under biases, solitude my shield in corporate straightness. Her empathy met it steady, arm wrapping my waist, pulling me into a shaded nook where rocks sheltered us, moss yielding soft underfoot. The intimate rush hit immediate, her hands framing my face, kiss deeper, urgent, lips bruising as bodies pressed, erasing old divides. Fingers tangled in hair, cool strands slipping through, hers sliding under my shirt, tracing ribs with heat that arched my back. Pine enveloped us, breaths ragged, the spark blazing into something fierce, hidden yet consuming. By retreat's close, vans rumbling down the slopes, city waiting below. The thread stretched taut. Messages charging screens, her voice echoing in my ear long after the peaks faded. Defenses dissolved fast. Our secret romance, a fire kindled quick in the mountain's hold. The city reclaimed us fast. Towers scraping the gray sky. Traffic's low roar replacing the pine's hush. Messages flowed constant at first, her voice and texts charged and veiled, pulling me through the urban grind. But in the office elevators, knees brushed deliberate, the metal walls cool against my back as we rode up alone. Her leg pressed warm through wool pants, a quiet claim that stirred heat low in my gut, her eyes holding mine in the mirrored reflection. We'd step apart at the doors, masks snapping firm, but the contact lingered, skin humming. One evening, after a briefing dragged into dusk, she caught my arm in the empty corridor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting stark lines on her face. This pull between us. Does the imbalance scare you? Her voice edged soft, vulnerability cracking her executive shell, eyes searching, like she feared her role would shatter what we'd kindled. I paused, fingers grazing hers quick, hidden from the hall's echo. It weighs, but your care lightens it, I said, pulse steadying her doubt. Consent threaded through then, clear and voiced. No rush, her pauses drawing my affirmations, each time boundaries blurred. We'd halt like that, breath sinking in the sterile quiet, her thumb circling my wrist once before retreating. Lines held deliberate, discussed in hushed calls after hours. Her position demanded caution, no leverage, just mutual want. It rooted us, the dynamic navigated slow, her restraint deepening the draw. Shifts rippled through work, subtle yet profound. My voice rose in meetings, once muted input now landing solid, her subtle cues empowering, a glance across the polished table urging me forward. Your take on the projections? She'd ask, eyes locking mine, the room's drone fading as I outlined risks, numbers flowing steady from my notes. Colleagues leaned in, murmurs turning from oversight to attention, but she steered any side glances, tone level. Her insight cuts through. Heed it. Edges hone for me, whispers of advancement in quiet HR chats, salary easing the month's press without show. It tied to that summit rescue, her quiet lift balancing scales, seeing me beyond the desk's shadow, as equal in the weave. Identity surfaced raw in stolen nights. Her apartment high above the streets, rain streaking the glass like faint tears. We'd unravel closets over wine, the liquid dark in stems, her voice low against the city's hum. Coming out here feels like stepping off a ledge, she admitted, glass paused midair, eyes tracing the skyline's glow. Family ties bound her tight, legacies expecting heirs in straight lines, her queer bends hidden to preserve the throne. I nodded, sharing my fractures, past heartbreaks where women withdrew under office biases, judgments that forced my solitude, guarding against the stares that clipped wings. Old scars rose then, her hand covering mine, thumb pressing slow. We claim our space now, I whispered, the pact ceiling soft. No grand reveals yet, but visions sketched. Weekends unmasked, lives entwined without shadows. Biases echoed in tales. An exec's veiled jab at traditional values in a lunch drone. Her rebuttal sharp but coded, shielding our veiled truths. Heat built in overtime hours, the office emptying to hollow echoes, screens casting blue on empty desks. We'd linger, report spread wide, but palms traced edges intent. Her fingers along my arm under sleeves, light pulls drawing shivers. One night, door locked with a click, she drew me against the desk, mouths crashing urgent, her body pinning mine to the edge. Hands roamed measured, consent breathed between kisses. Stop if it's too much. The power thrummed, her yielding until I tugged her closer, equal in the rush. Skin heated under touch, breaths fracturing, the city below a distant blur. Strains tested from outside then, a deadline crashing heavy, pulls thinning us taut. Hall whispers hinted favoritism, eyes narrowing in passing, the fragile bond straining under the glare. But we anchored, her stance quiet, my resolve rising to match. Her gesture landed quiet at first, like a shift in the current you sense before it pulls stronger. 2 weeks back in the city, an email hit my inbox from HR, her name at the close. Senior coordinator role, starting now. The screen blurred for a second, my fingers still on the keys in the dim light of my apartment. Pay jumped enough to cover the rent without the late night worry, even tuck some away for those hidden dreams I'd kept buried. It traced straight to that summit night, her attached note plain. You held me steady. Let me do the same for you. No show, just access unlocked. Workshop slotted in my calendar, contacts from her circle reaching out, paths opening that had stayed closed tight. I leaned back in the chair, the city's low hum filtering through the window, a warmth uncoiling slow in my chest. Not charity. Recognition of the load I'd shouldered silent, her hand extending without strings. Inner circles widened from there, drawing me in step by step. Invites came low-key. A team lunch at a corner spot, the air thick with coffee steam and faint rain on pavement outside. I walked in tense, my shirt pressed but pulse thudding low. She guided me to the chair next to hers, her knee nudging mine under the table, hidden from the easy talk of quarters and clients. Voices overlapped around deals, but her fingers brushed mine once, quick squeeze beneath the linen, anchoring me in the unfamiliar pull. Solitude's edge dulled gradual, shared plates blending our spaces, her sharp world meeting my veiled one without push. One night, her kitchen island gleamed cool under the pendant light, steam rising from rice she'd portioned herself. Try this, she said, spoon extended, her eyes steady as the bite warmed my tongue. Stories flowed then, her chuckle low when I fumbled the chopsticks, the room gaining weight, no longer hollow. She stood firm against the cuts when they came. A morning in the break room, fluorescent glare sharp, a coworker's words slipping casual about distractions, dragging promotions. Gaze sliding my way after the news spread. My skin heated, coffee mug tight in my hand. She entered from the hall, caught it clean, stepped forward even. Distractions sharpen focus. Challenge her output if you question. The space quieted, chairs shifting, her look sweeping until heads turned away. No volume, just her weight carving room, guarding without tying lines to us. It repeated in a call, a partner's subtle prod at my notes, laced with edges that stung queer under the surface. She cut in measured. Her breakdown stands. Proceed. I felt the lift then, bold in its hush. Her wielding position not against me, but beside, affirming the depths we'd whispered in the dark. Desire swelled in the late shifts, her domain pulling me into the hours after close. We'd connect post-deadline, her office door sealing with a soft lock, skyline pressing dark against the panes like a shared secret. Bodies aligned one evening, her against me on the wide desk, hands mapping slow, skin heating under blouses eased open. What do you want? She'd breathe. Lips at my collar, the check pausing for my pull closer, equal in the surge. Heat climbed fast, breaths breaking, her fingers lacing mine as we moved synced, claiming the guarded needs we'd held back so long. After, words came soft against the leather, echoes of our truths, no covers now. "You're in this with me," she'd say, palm flat on my side, sensing the even thrum. Old isolations eased warm, her nearness smoothing the bends I'd armored, our forms a steady clasp owning what we'd hidden. We owned it joint. Queer realities no longer veiled, but claimed low. Nights stretched to mornings, her palm in mine on shadowed streets, pavement damp under our steps, air edged with fall's bite. Past breaks surfaced duller, softened by her constant hold. Rejections that once locked me tight, now divided in talk. Our path, no straight lines, I breathed one early light, curtains filtering gray, her frame curled to mine. The grasp felt rooted, truths no secret but quiet power. Pressures edged in from beyond, then. Calls demanding we meet what brewed below. The crisis built in the boardroom that gray afternoon, tension coiling like smoke from the vents, glass walls framing the city's relentless churn below. Execs crowded the table, voices sharpening over the projected slides, numbers glaring red from a botched merger, delays cascading like loose stones down a slope. Victoria stood at the front, marker in hand, her outline steady at first, dissecting fallout with clipped precision. But I saw the fracture early, from my seat midway down. The way her free hand clenched the table's edge, knuckles pressing pale, breaths pulling shallow against the AC's low drone. The room pressed in, fluorescent hum amplifying every pause. No mountain buffer now, just urban isolation, mirroring the retreat's weight. Expectations piling without escape. A senior exec leaned forward, tone probing sharp. Timeline slipping, risks unaddressed. Her responses faltering, repeating a clause as sweat beaded her brow despite the chill. Murmurs swelled, glances exchanging doubt, the spiral I'd steadied before twisting back. Her eyes flicking to mine, brief, pleading in the chaos. My pulse matched hers, empathy surging hot. Guarded queer weights we'd both buried. Her under legacy chains, mine from heartbreaks that left echoes of solitude, now fueling this silent bridge. I shifted subtle, foot extending under the polished oak to press light against hers. The contact warmed through leather, anchoring without words. Our gazes held a beat, my nod urging ground in the hidden touch, her inhale deepening as she pivoted the pitch, weaving contingencies that steadied the tide. The group eased, nods replacing jabs, the peak breaking without full shatter. No one clocked my roll, but her glance lingered after, relief threaded with fire. As chairs scraped and voices dispersed, we slipped to her office, door sealing soft, the space contracting to our uneven rhythms echoing off the sleek walls. She sagged against the desk, palms flat on the cool glass, exhales fracturing still. I closed the gap, hands on her arms, feeling the residual shake fade under my grip, her skin feverish through the blouse. "You pulled through," I murmured, forehead to hers, the air heavy with faint ozone from the screens, and her subtle warmth cutting the sterile draft. Truths flooded then, raw and urgent. Her terror of the cracks widening, queer desires she'd veiled against the board's straight-edged stairs, the empire's throne demanding she stay unbroken. "Losing you in this would end me," she whispered, fingers fisting my shirt, drawing me flush, the fabric straining. I echoed back, voice low against her temple. Doubts of the draw risking my armored world, yet the spark we'd kindled refusing to dim. Lips met fierce in that grip, sealing the raw vow, tongues urgent, hands roaming to affirm the want, her thigh parting mine against the desk's edge, heat flaring immediate. Balance forged deliberate after, dynamics leveling in hushed oaths over late coffees steaming on her windowsill, rain pattering the panes like hesitant breaths. "No wielding this over you," she'd affirm, eyes locked, seeking my nod before words turned tender. Partnership pledged equal, her valuing my counsel on crises, Me naming limits without recoil. Consent constant in pauses that honored the tilt. Work evolved seamless. My seat shifted to strategy circles, her advocacy open, favoritism whispers dissolving under earned strides. We'd navigate joint, the imbalance rinsing to shared terrain, her hand in mine during shadowed drives home, fingers lacing firm against the wheel's hum. Weeks on, our worlds touched cautious. My kin assembling for a simple supper in my flat, air rich with roasting herbs and steam from the pot. Victoria arrived last, jacket draped, steps measured at the entry. My aunt's gaze narrowed first, arms folded, the old guard questioning another layer on my concealed life. But she knelt to the circle, voice gentle, passing bowls, weaving tales of her own familial rifts, without press. Bonds knit chosen, tentative chuckles thawing the air, my cousin's hand tugging hers for a puzzle piece, wariness melting to easy warmth. No broadcasts, just her presence mending divides, palm grazing mine beneath the cloth, rooted and true. Payoff bloomed, one fog-draped dawn. Paths meandering the riverside trail near work, mist beating damp on our coats, air thick with wet soil and faint exhaust. Hands clasped solid, fingers woven, we strolled near, solitudes cleansed in the hush. Her warmth seeped through, the fog curling like old guards lifting, resolved now in this steady weave. Past fractures healed in the quiet, the ignition from that alcove a flame holding firm against the city's pull. Days folded into shared patterns without announcement. Morning light spilling across her penthouse counters, the marble cool under my elbows as coffee brewed with a steady drip. I'd let myself in with the key she'd pressed into my palm one quiet night, the metal still warm from her touch, and find her at the stove, flipping pancakes that sizzled soft, butter melting golden. We'd move in sync then, my hip bumping hers as I grabbed plates from the shelf, ceramic clinking faint, her free hand grazing my lower back, light, affirming, the contact a silent vow in the dawn hush. Evenings stretched over counters laden with takeout containers, steam rising thick with soy and ginger, her voice low as she unpacked the day's fractures while I traced idle circles on her thigh, the denim rough under my fingers. The rhythm steadied us, urban chaos easing into this weave. No force, just bodies aligning natural. Warmth seeping through the guarded spaces we'd once filled alone. Work sharpened under her quiet lift, my place solidifying amid the office's hum, halls echoing with fewer doubts. Sessions drew me center now, voice cutting clear over data streams, her subtle tilt from across the gleaming table anchoring me as I mapped outcomes, projections landing firm. Biases thawed slow. Peers' looks shifted from side glances to nods, murmurs dissolving as my breakdowns held weight. She'd draw me close after, door ajar to the corridor's buzz, her palm pressing my shoulder through the blouse, thumb kneading a knot. "That was yours," she'd breathe, the words sinking deep, smoothing the old hesitations I'd armored against queer stares. No bold favoritism, just her steady carve of room, the dynamic evening to partnership, our threads blending seamless in the fluorescent flow. Authentic layers peeled back in those unguarded stretches, talks bearing the last shadows. We'd tangle in sheets one rain-lashed night, drops drumming the windows like urgent pulses, her cheek against my chest as breaths leveled. "No veils anymore," I whispered, fingers sifting her hair, strands damp and heavy. She'd raise her eyes, steady in the bedside lamp's amber, and voice her queer core. Love silenced by familial weights, the hollow of authenticity stifled under executive demands. I mirrored it soft against the pillow. Fractures from women who'd retreated under workplace judgments, the isolation I'd claimed to dodge biases that sliced deep. Affirmation laced every gaze now, her fingers seeking mine in crowded lifts, no hide, just the quiet own of us. It mended gradual, those exchanges, ancient hurts rising like stirred silt, but settling warmer. Our truths no longer fractures, but strengths laced tight. Challenges knit us closer, judgments surfacing unasked but met as one. A kin call one midday yanked her rigid, phone to ear in the living room. My brother's tone crackling through. Prods, wrapped in old queer edges. About lifestyle fits that echoed hidden bends. Her frame tensed, grip whitening on the device, but I eased beside her, hand on her knee, steadying the quiver. "This is our build," she replied into the line, even, my squeeze urging her forward. The talk peaked jagged, barbs traded like flint strikes, but we endured, her ending it with a breath that trembled. Later, over chamomile steaming on the ledge, we sifted it, tenderness in our tones, her wry smile when I owned my family's lingering guards. "They'll shift," I said, lips to her forehead, the tie coiling firmer against the pull. Office nips followed, a supplier's veiled cut in a video link at personal distractions, eroding drive, screens narrowing on us. She parried calm, my counter rising sharp, our front united flushing the slate clean. Strength grew in those binds, palms joined under boards, trials no longer lone burdens but joint strides. The lasting tug rooted profound, touches soft in the still gaps. Her fingertips along my wrist one twilight. Dusk filtering mauve through the blinds. The stroke like packed earth, firm and enduring. Hold gripped against the metropolis's drag, lives no longer separate, but one stream coursing even. Fingers woven under the city's endless hum, earth solid under our strides. The draw no longer veiled, but haven. From summit rescue to entwined paths, walls fallen, truths owned whole. If this stirred your hidden flames, subscribe for more tales of ties that anchor the gale, tap the bell, and drop in comments what binds your guarded core.